So as humans, we want or desire or need stimulation. But in this world of debt, credit, running through industrialization and commercialization, we now have a world which is all about more,
right.
need. And that has created a kind of moving goalpost for stimulation.
Yeah.
Different types of stimulation, and not so much natural stimulation, not like how do I put it a different way? The happiest year of my life in the last 20 years was the year after my company collapsed. After my divorce happened, my company collapsed. I took a year off work. And in that year, I decided not to work at all. At first, I was very bored. Didn't know what the fuck. How do you fill a day? And so I started making food, which I'd never done before, to every single meal. And then I would go to the gym and just do whatever was on. Spinning, yoga. I was doing Pilates with all the old ladies. I was walking my kids to school and back, and spending time with them in the evenings. And I was reading and watching films. It's the happiest year of my life. I wasn't chasing anything. Just day to day, I was just doing what I wanted to do in that day. And it was my happiest year. There was no massive highs and no massive lows. Right. Since then, I've built this new career, which I'm so lucky to have. I get to do some of the most amazing things, but have bigger highs and bigger lows. Right. You know, I'm away from my kids for weeks on end, which sucks. With these retrobates, I'm feeling the pressure of having to make shows and make films, and somebody loves something I do and it's great, and then they don't, it sucks, and I get shouted on Twitter and I hate it, and then there's lots of highs and lows, and the stimulation is a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was just a slow moving train. How do you explain that?
So I can relate. And I have always sought stimulation in myriad ways, whether it was coaching on the football pitch, whether it was traveling around the country playing music, whether it was, I was a storm chaser for many years living in Texas and chasing tornadoes. The adrenaline and the sort of the dopamine hits from it, that worked for me. I got to a certain point in my life and it stopped working. All it did was make my heart pound, but the stimulation wasn't. So here's the thing. I'm homeless. And when I say that, I don't mean like I'm, in
a tent.
In trouble. But
I don't. What do you mean by that, though?
I don't have a home.
But out of choice?
Yeah. And I don't have stuff. My entire life fits into a backpack.
Tell me more about this. Hold on. Yeah. You don't so people should know we've not met before.
We have not.
You emailed me and you sent me a paper. And by the way, like I say, we get how many a month? How many people ask on the show a month, Denny?
Hundreds?
Like hundreds. I mean, some we don't even read. But when anyone sends me a paper, I'll at least read their email and the intro. And if I'm grabbed by it, I'll read a bit more. And then if I really think it's something worth looking at, I'll send it to Danny and Neil. And sometimes they'll come back and they'll be like, yay, nay. And actually this one, you weren't sure, were you?
I wasn't 100% sure, to be fair.
I wasn't 100% sure.
I totally assumed that I would get an email saying, really interesting, but...
No, but it was this idea of the fiat brain, and I could relate to it. I have... I went through very bad mental health problems after the breakup of my marriage. Very dark times. Addictions, depression, trips to hospital. Like, it was fucking awful. Yeah. Like, awful. And just I can't tell you how rough it was. And I came back out of it. Okay. But when you talked about this fiat brain, I'm always conscious of the fact that, like, I've got this new life, which is just like I feel so blessed to have. But I always remember that year. Yeah. And I was still happier that year because it was a much simpler life. And when you talk about that, I think about Steve Jobs. He didn't have shit in his house. He just didn't have stuff. And do you know how I also think about? Do you know who Jiddu Krishnamurti is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So during those bad times, I was reading a lot about Jude. I have a tattoo of him on my leg.
Yes.
And he talks about the accumulation of stuff. Like when you buy a house, you have to have a garden. There's a garden you have to keep, and then you have to have a fence, and you have to ensure the fence is fixed. And you can carry on. And in, I guess, like I would add to this, you have to have a kitchen, and in your kitchen you have to have plates, and you have to have like food, and like there's just accumulation of all this stuff. And with stuff, there's stuff you have to then think about and look after and prepare. And like he always says, you need a much simpler life.
Yeah.
Actually, he also says you shouldn't fall in love because love is mainly
I am
pain.
totally with him 100%.
Well, you can come back to love, but the idea is that like this simpler life.
Yeah.
And so, by the way, when I said, "Come on," I don't know anything about you. I don't know you're homeless. This is out of choice. When did this start?
It's always been my impulse. So my adulthood, like even though I had a successful teaching career, I was a school administrator, I worked really hard to create the illusion that I was kind of part of the mainstream, but I'm not. I've always been drawn to minimalism, even though I'll go through periods of time where I'm desperate for stimulation. So I'll buy a $2,000 guitar, and it'll be fabulous for like a week, and then it's like, well, fuck, now I've shelled out $2,000 for a guitar that I so don't need, and that no longer I don't get anything from it, so I give it away. I, over the course of time, have pared away and pared away. So I sleep. I crash at friends' houses. This last 5 months, a friend of mine who runs a school said, "Hey, I need a grown-up to live in the dorm to take care of the kids." I was like, fine, I'll sleep in, it's a dorm room, right? With a little shower and a little kitchenette. I move around, and I have kids. My daughter is grown, and she's traveling around Europe, and she's in college, and she does her thing. And my son is still, he's 19, and he has a disability. He still goes to high school in Vermont and lives with his mom, but I see him, every month or two. And we talk every day on FaceTime. So I have a phone. I pay for their phones. Other than that, I have nothing. Literally. I move around. I spend time with friends. I put everything into my backpack. And when I start to accumulate stuff, like this past 5 months, I accumulated a coffee maker, and I accumulated a little hot pot, and then I give it away. I'm like, I don't want this. I don't want any of this stuff. So,
have you seen the film Into the Wild?
Yeah, I read the book.
Okay.
And I saw some of the movie, and I found it really troubling.
Interesting.
Very
Why?
upsetting. There was something about his minimalism that struck me as desperate, like a desperation to be away from, the throwing away of money. Like there was something about it that felt sad. My minimalism feels freeing. That was that's a projection of sorts.
But as a film or the book, did you get different things from the film and the book?
I don't know.
Yeah.
The film was with who played.
I can't remember, but Eddie Vedder wrote the soundtrack from Pearl Jam.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I love the soundtrack. And whenever I listen to the soundtrack, I think back to the film. And I think back to him getting rid of his car and pissing his parents off and just going off into the wild. And I just often think I would like to do this. I do.
I think it's different when you're, 19 or 20.
No, I want to do it at 43.
Right. No, I think it's again, these are all projections because I'm basically saying, hey, everybody should live my life. I think it's better when you're older because I know that I'm doing it because it fits me neurologically. Always comes back to my neurology and my body. My body cannot contend with possessions. My body cannot contend with intimate, long-lasting relationships. My body cannot contend with being in a workplace and having lots of colleagues and having to negotiate. It just goes like this. It always has been that way. And now that I'm older, I can honor it and say, yeah, what the fuck? That's fine.
No, we're going to come back to love. I appreciate this because going from that very simple life to this more complicated life, I've collected people to help get stuff done. So Danny is a part of the collection. I don't mean that in a derogative way. What I mean is,
Am I
it's
the
like
best part of the collection?
I don't know, man. It's like it's hard to not give it to Emma, but like I don't mean it in a derogative way. I mean Danny's fucking brilliant. Like he's one of the most brilliant people, and he runs this part. Okay, but I've collected people that help me do things. But I've collected a podcast, and I've collected a film career, and I've now collected a football club, and you know. And there's a build up of stuff, and there was a time. I mean, Danny knew it when we were in Austin. Like 8 weeks ago
In March, yeah.
I was in a bad way, right?
There
Because
was a time that wasn't good.
no, I had a lawsuit. I had a football club I was trying to take over. I had like a collection of all this shit I'd collected that I now had to deal with. And sometimes I think of a simpler life and a simple I can't because I'm scared, but like, could I just let this all go and live a simpler life, knowing that the happiest year I have, and which has taken me to my point is like, have we created an illusion of what happiness is that is keeping us away from the happiness we really should be living?
And what you just said is that's a cognitive thing, right?
Yeah.
Like we create the illusion because we create the narrative, the story.
And Instagram is for me, is the perfect example of that illusion. We give the world this illusion of happiness. Here's a snap of every happy moment I'm having. Here, look, I'm in New York. Here, I'm looking at a football match. Here, I'm at a concert. I'm always happy. And then our friends are looking, going, "Oh my God, they're always happy. I need to be happy."
Right.
Have we created like this? Is this the collective issue we've created?
Yeah, I like that. I think that the collective, there is that keeping up with the Joneses part of that collective sort of like, oh, they must be much happier because they have these things and are doing these activities. I must not be as happy. I should aspire to that. But it's also, we are so highly attuned to the need for a physiological, and I do this like when I do that sort of gesture in front of my body, it's like this is our nervous system, our vagus nerve, the entirety of our nervous system. We're so attuned to needing more and more just to feel okay. That baseline has gone up and up and up, that we're like pushing ourselves. We keep pushing and pushing and pushing to get that baseline stimulation. And so when I talk about my minimalism, look, when I heard you owned a football team,
yeah.
I was fucking jealous as fuck. I was like, oh, that is so awesome. And then I played out the fantasy in my head. I wish I had, a great deal of wealth, and then I would get a football team, and then I kept playing it out. And
I think you overestimate how much Bedford costs.
I was looking at them in the league. I was kind of like trying to figure.
You tell me what you think, and I'm going to tell you the reality, because it's an interesting point.
What it cost?
No. In terms of like where you ran through the idea of owning a football club in your head.
All right. So and I played out the sort of the game. The same game I play out when it's like, oh, I wish I was a famous musician, and I play it out, and it always gets to the point where I'm like, nope, it's not. I can literally feel my body going. Like I can't even hold down. I can't even have a job anymore, and it's not because I'm not competent. It's because my body says nope. But I'm still like, it's still like way deep down in me. I'm still the guy who seeks stimulation. I'm still the guy who goes on dating websites and tries to go on dates, and then I go on a few dates and I'm like, nope. I'm still the guy who fantasizes about I play the lottery. Why the hell would I play the lottery? If I won the lottery, what? I would be miserable. I would give it all away. And then I would be like, giving it away, I would think, this is going to make me feel great because I'm going to give all this money away. It's very altruistic of me, isn't it? Oh, well, I would just be getting the stimulation from the false, everybody being, oh, Dan, thank you for the money. It's not relational. It's just, dopamine hits.
Let me tell you about the football club, but I'll lead up to it. Again, let's use the benchmark, the happy year, where I wasn't working, and I woke up every day and said, what do I want to do today? I'll go down the gym, I'll go spinning, I'll go for a walk, I'll read this book, I'll watch this. I would go to the cinema on my own, which, by the way, if you ever do that, book your ticket online because I didn't. And I got to the cinema, I was like, ticket for one, please. And I felt like a fucking loser.
Oh, I do it all the time.
But I would go to the cinema. I just did what I want. And I would sleep well. I was just happy. It was brilliant. And I get back into work and it becomes new goals. Okay, got a podcast. Well, I need the downloads to go up. Because if the downloads go up, I can get a sponsor. I've got a sponsor. I need the downloads to go up, so I need another sponsor. Like, that creates that kind of like business growth mindset into that. We just had our third biggest month on record, and I'm like, why the fuck's is not our second biggest month on record? Like, so there's that constant chase there. And then I accumulate a football club. It's my dream to own my local football club. This is amazing. It's mainly been like fucking hard work and shit. People yelling at me, people pissed off, us losing. And like, all I'm thinking about now is we've got to win the league. We have to win the league. And then what's going to happen the following season? It's like, we need to win this league. So I've collected these things that have created these new pressures, that have created these things that affect sleep, happiness, physical, mental health. And I don't know why, but I've done it. Yeah. But is it not is this not like the human nature? Isn't this even like evolutionary nature? Is this what that got us to leap out of the oceans, to grow flippers, to walk on land, to then create fire? And isn't there like this thing that's within us?
No, I don't buy that.
Okay.
I don't buy the argument that like we're driven to innovate or we're driven to grow. I think that we, and again, like this comes back to the fiat brain and why Bitcoin is the savior.
Yes.
If, down the road, hopefully, right? I look at, so you used the word happy, you were happy. I don't mean to be patronizing. I try not to use words like that because I'm simply observing where I feel the most at home. So when I say at home, it's like literally at home in my body. I don't like happiness is kind of this, it's a story that we create. I was happy. But you were, you might be at home in your body with all of this, stuff you've accumulated and the show and the podcast and the football club. That might be your homeostatic reference point. It's just that it gets to the point where it's really stressful. It can be. And the cortisol is coursing through your body and the adrenaline is coursing through your body and your body says, oh, we can't do this.